In terms of calculating the fee, then, we first have to establish what's called a dwelling unit equivalent. That's also described in the report, and if there are questions about that, I can go into more detail. In essence, what that is a way to standardize how we measure different types of development. Obviously, this fee is going to be charged for a new apartment building, a new office building, a new commercial building. Each one of those has different characteristics and different types of impact on the transportation system, but we need to have a consistent unit of measurement so that all of those can be measured consistently. And that unit is the dwelling unit equivalent. And as I said, if there's more questions about that, I'd be happy to answer those. But essentially what we're doing then is a simple division problem where we have our total cost of all the improvements, which is the $127 million we saw from before, divided by the total number of DUEs, total number of dwelling unit equivalents that are expected over the life of this program. And that result then gives you the maximum fee that could be charged for every unit of development. So that result then, given the $127 million program of projects that we had identified, the result comes out as we've listed here. So for single-family units, close to $14,000, a little over $7,000 for a multifamily dwelling unit, different ranges for different types of commercial buildings, $9 to $12 a square foot for office buildings, $2 to $7 a square foot for industrial buildings, and $9 to $17 per square foot for retail buildings. And that depends on the type, the more specific type of use that is likely to be in each one of those buildings. So in order to actually implement a fee, these are some of the next steps. As we've been saying, what we have here, what we've produced here in this report, is required by state law. It is a nexus study. It is something that has to be done before a fee program can be implemented. But it is, in and of itself, a technical study. It's there just to establish that nexus, that reasonable relationship between impacts and fees. And it is there to document what the maximum potential fee might be, the maximum that could potentially be justifiable based on this analysis. The report does not in and of itself make any recommendations about exactly what the fee amounts ought to be, because the local jurisdictions who have control over the program, who will be adopting the program, have a lot of discretion in choosing what level of fee they feel is appropriate. So in order to move forward, the implementation process would obviously require adoption both by the city and the county. Both of those bodies would need to work together on deciding what level of fees they feel are appropriate based on the nexus study that's presented. We would recommend, based on our experience, that it would be best to have a uniform fee throughout the Ukiah Valley. So that is the same fee in both the city of Ukiah and in the surrounding county areas. That is typically much easier to administer, and it's much more predictable for developers within that area. And it just helps to promote the sense that this is a regional program in which both entities are working cooperatively to develop and to deliver these projects. And one other important point is that whatever ordinance that might be adopted by the city and the county would typically allow for regular adjustments to the fee. And this is important, as you know, costs to construct physical improvements to the transportation system tend to change a lot over time, and it's good to be able to adjust the fee accordingly. So we'd certainly recommend that whatever ordinance you adopt have that ability to adjust on a regular basis. So as far as next steps go, this is the presentation then of the Nexus study. As I said, both Phil and I would be very happy to answer any questions that you might have about the study. At this stage then, the policymakers, your board and the city council, would decide how to direct your respective staffs to work together and to work with the MCOG staff to discuss the various details of implementation of such a fee program, and then would consider the ordinance that is eventually drafted. So that's it as far as my presentation. Thank you again for your time, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions at this point? Supervisor Pinches.
The calculation of 5.5 million square foot, that's commercial and industrial by 2030 is, I just can't fathom that, but maybe that's more of a comment. How does this impact study, how does it get around, it has to kind of be adopted by the Board of Supervisors and or the city. How can that get around Prop 218 and not get around the 2/3 vote of the people for a tax increase or a levying of a tax? How does that get around that?
It's not a tax. According to law.
You call it a fee, so that gets around it.
And that is defined in the in AB 1600, the California state law that governs mitigation fees. You know, specifically gives local jurisdictions the power to levy fees as long as they follow these guidelines set forth.
That's pretty simple, I guess.
Questions
Kind
of,
of like, how do you rob? Go buy a gun.
questions of staff.